What is going on, my friends, and welcome back to another video on the channel. Well, in today's video, we are going over Solana, as it does seem that it may be getting set to make a pretty big move over the next couple of days, maybe even throughout the weekend, a little bit more boring, but a big pop on Monday. And so with that being said, we're going to kind of evaluate what is going on with the price right now, how we can expect this to play out, and how we can take advantage to maximize gains, of course. So with that being said, let's skip the BS, let's skip the fluff, and let's get straight into the good stuff. So what we're looking at for Solana has been relative, consolidation, right? We saw this pretty solid breakout to the upside, which we talked about. It retested, backtested this level of support absolutely beautifully. And now we are looking to see a bit of consolidation, again, a bit of sideways trading, which is always okay with me after we see a big break to the upside. Now, of course, this was not the huge break that we're looking for of the descending wedge, but it was the break of the descending level of resistance that we did establish back in December. So the fact that we did clear step number one, which looked like setting a new macro local high, that is always amazing. And the fact that we are now holding at these levels is also amazing. But based off of some of our indicators, it does seem like Solana is getting prepared to make another move. And I want to talk about what that move could look like and how we can validate that to either side. So looking at our Bollinger Band width, which is of course a good way to measure volatility, we can see that on the hourly charts, Solana is back to its key level of support. And usually what happens around this level is that it will be the beginning of a bit of volatility. Looking at the 4-hour Bollinger Band width as well, you can see if we drag up to where we are right now, we're sitting in, again, another crucial area in which we will usually come back down to, see limited volatility. Once we hit this level, then we start to continue upwards. Now, sure, it may, drop a little bit lower back to some of these levels, but realistically, we are in the range now in which we will usually start to see an increase in volatility. Now, this doesn't tell us what direction it's going to go in, but it does tell us that we can start to expect that volatility, and we can start to expect that big move to happen relatively sooner than later. So with that being said, we're going to kind of use that information now, knowing that we did break this level of resistance, flipped it into support, and are holding well with limited volatility. We're now going to use that to determine where do we think this thing is going and how could we take advantage of that. So basically, looking at this thing from more of a broad perspective, one thing that I absolutely love is the fact that we are in a technical uptrend, okay, which looks like a high, a higher high, a low, and at the moment could possibly be a higher low. Now, although we did see a good breakout and establishment of support, I am actually under the belief that we may see a little bit of a continuation to the downside in the short term as we come back to really backtest this support, okay? Now, kind of paying attention to what we're seeing here, what we know is that typically speaking, generally speaking, when the price of a crypto sees a solid breakout, it will resort back to its Fibonacci 618 to 786 zone. For Solana, that does look like a price zone between about $141 to about $136. So I am under the belief that it definitely has the room to push down maybe another $5 to even $10 before really starting to establish some true strong support. Now, looking at the stock RSI in comparison to that, on the daily charts, you can also see that it does seem as if we are getting a bit of convergence in which we may see this blue-orange cross, which does look like just temporary downtrend. I don't believe that this is one that looks something like this in which we go all the way back down. I do believe we may see something of this nature, which looks like a small little pullback before that eventual continuation back up to the top side. So at the moment, what I'm preparing for is that we can still pull back a little bit further. I wouldn't really mind buying some Solana around $140 or so, and as long as we are above $136, I am under the belief that this is the start of the move that gets us back up to this $180, $190 level. Now, looking at this thing in forms of patterns and that form of technical analysis, one thing we can see is a beautiful inverse head and shoulders / cup and handle type of pattern playing out here, in which we can very clearly see we have our cup, we have our cup line, and then we have what seems to be the handle at the moment. And so what that means for us is that as long as we do come down to put in a high or low, especially if we can put it in the 618 to 786 zone around $140 roughly, I am under the belief that this technical breakout will happen, in which once we break 154, let's go ahead and call it $155 again. Once we break that level, there is a significantly strong chance that we will see some strong growth to the upside. Now, do remember, I'm not a friggin', I can't read the future. I have no crystal ball. I'm no expert even at that. But what I can do is tell you guys what's within the realm of possibilities based off of historical data. And what's in the realm of possibilities is that at this point, as long as we put in a high or a low above $136, I am under the belief that the moment we clear 156, we're looking really good for some type of push to the upside. Now, in terms of a technical breakout target, that gives us a technical breakout target of right around $180, which just so happens to align with our most recent local high, which is of course absolutely phenomenal. That means that we could very possibly start to see us retesting the setting of a new local high and continuing our uptrend here. Now, whenever we need to, whenever we start to see these technical patterns play out and form, we need to start to think if are they realistic or not. And personally speaking, I definitely would say that this one seems to be extremely realistic. Now, the reason that I say that is looking at our RSI on a daily chart. So let's go ahead and let's really make me small. There we go. On the daily charts, one thing we can see is that we have this key level of resistance in which we've not really cleared yet. We have this downward sloping level of resistance in which we've been in realistically since September. And now what we can see is that even though we did see a nice push here, there definitely is a little bit of more room to work to the upside. And even if we are to see a bit of a pullback, somewhat similar to what we saw back here maybe, in which we get up there, we pull back a bit before continuing, I do believe we're going to come back to retest this trend line at some given point. And I think in that instance in which we do see that extension on the price, that gives us the retest that we need to see here. That who knows? I mean, could that be the breakout that we need? This boom, in which we break the downward sloping level of resistance on the RSI, which gets us out of this descending wedge? Sure, it absolutely could be, but I'm not thinking too far ahead right now. What I'm thinking is that we haven't come back to retest this yet. And with that being said, that means that there is the room to the upside to work, which definitely opens that door for us to see a push towards that $170 to $180 region. Because looking at this thing historically, we can see that when we're in these moments of consolidation, when we're in these moments similar to what we're seeing now, something like this, we will always, even if sometimes we don't reach it in the short term, we always end up resorting back to that trend line. And so when we resorted back to that trend line for this example, boom, resortment back, breakout, continuation. You even look at somewhere back here, right? Whenever we saw this initial breakout, boom, we saw the breakout. We saw the break of the trend line, a retest, a back set. Again, a back set, a double bottom, a continuation. And you can see how these initial breakouts of that downward sloping level of resistance on the RSI is always going to happen. We will always back test it at some point. And the moment we break it, historically on a daily chart perspective, has led to some pretty strong growth. And so I am under the belief that this is very possible. As long as we are above $136, we can very well see that push up to 170 to 180, and who knows, maybe even the top side of our descending wedge. So personally speaking, what invalidates this entire thing is if we start to realistically come back down and go above, we don't really want to see this go below 136. Is it possible for us to go below 136 and still continue upwards? Sure, it is. But at that point, that does start to look a little bit more as if we're putting in, let's go ahead and, let's say, so it looks to me personally as if we would still be putting in, some type of C correction, in which at that point we would likely come back towards maybe even the bottom side support here, somewhere towards $122. And then at that point, it becomes more of a game of, okay, well, now we got to establish support. Now we got to break trend, and now we have to restart. And so optimally speaking, as long as we're above $136, I am under the belief that we're looking good for the continuation to happen now, especially if the market does allow. Now, remember, a lot of this market does revolve around Bitcoin. So if Bitcoin allows it, then it'll happen. But if Bitcoin tanks, Solana likely will too. So overall, my overall thesis today is as long as we're above $136, we are looking good for continuation to the upside. And at that point in which we would break $155, we have a technical breakout target right up to around 180 towards our local high, which does look like some type of growth of roughly, 15 to 16%. And that is a trade in which I personally would be taking on. Now, from that point forward, if we do reach that level, we will then monitor our indicators to see if we have the strength to go ahead and break topside resistance. But I don't really want to talk too much about this level here until we at least see a breaking of 155. So overall, that's going to be about it for today's video on Solana. I'm not trying to spread hopium, but things do seem and feel relatively bullish to me. And I will always consider that, and I will always then distribute that information out to you all in the most unbiased way as I possibly can. Of course, if you did enjoy today's video, you can always let me know by smashing that like button and subscribing to the channel if you are new. And I'll see you next time. Peace.